It wasn't creepy while it was happening because I was so young, but in hindsight it's pretty weird and a bit disturbing. When I was very young and shared a bedroom with my little sister, I woke up one night to the sound of puppies whimpering. I looked under my bed and there were two puppies, one black, one brown and white. I woke my little sister and we crawled under the bed to interact with the puppies, never questioning where they came from. We were very young. Eventually our dad heard us and yelled through the door to go to bed. So we did. Never saw those puppies again. I asked my sister about this recently and she still remembers it, too. My mother had a similar experience. After my great-grandmother died, she said she turned the lights out and went to bed, but she looked down the hallway toward the living room and saw the lamp on. She went back to turn it off and on her way down the hall said she saw my great-grandmother sitting on the couch clear as day. By the time she got into the living room, she was gone with the lamp still on. My mom went to the doctor and asked him if she was crazy. LOL. When I was around 4 years old, I remember looking out of my bedroom window and seeing cars driving through our side yard. Instead of looking like our yard, it looked like an actual road and the cars were old-fashioned, looking like from the 1940s. This was in the 1970s. Our house was in a plan of homes with pretty large lots and the through street ran in a completely different area. Naturally, I was frightened by what I saw and ran to tell my mother and older sister. They dismissed it and said I was either dreaming or making things up. I guess I can't really blame them for that. My sister occasionally would tease me about it over the years, and for some reason every time I was in that part of the yard I would get a creepy feeling that I shouldn't be there. I must have been about 12 or 13 and my grandmother was visiting. She told my sister and me that when she was a young girl our neighborhood was part of a farm and the main road used to run right through our side yard. The road was moved when the farm was broken up into housing lots. My sister and I looked at each other. All I could say was, "Yes, I know." Years later I found aerials and maps online that proved the road was there until the 1940s. My brother, when he was really young, had an imaginary friend named Bill. When we were driving into town, he would point out Bill's house just inside the town lines. He would say Bill had all sorts of tractors and farm equipment and he even had stairs in his house. My parents used to brush it off, but once my grandma said that Bill's house used to be a farm before the town grew and the land was sold off for housing, but that the house he pointed out was still the same farmhouse. A few years ago, I looked up the property and past owners, and there was a William early on. Pretty interesting. When I was around 8 or 9, I had a teacher who sort of took on a motherly figure at school as I had issues at home. She ended up being murdered by her husband in a horrible way, and I remember months later seeing her, or a woman that looked identical to her, walking in the store. We made eye contact, and the woman sort of looked at me like I was a familiar face. Might have just been experiencing grief, not too sure. My parents took in a stray cat that we didn't know had a spreadable illness. After a few years, all our cats passed on. One night I was laying on my bed and I physically felt a cat jump on my bed and lean against my back, purring heavily. I called out my old cat's name, then I remembered he was dead and looked behind me and no kitty. I swear this is real. I was like 2 years old, but it's very engraved in my mind. I slept in a crib, still next to my parents' bed, and at some point in the middle of the night, I would wake up and in front of me there was a completely black female figure. I thought it was my mom. I even asked her, "Are you my mom?" And that thing just shook its head. It just stood there staring at me without doing anything, in complete silence. This happened to me about 3 times, although the one I remember most was one time I hugged that thing. I'm not sure why, maybe because it looked so much like my mom. Although I've considered it, I don't think it's been my mom. My mom is not one for making jokes, much less of that kind, and what mother would do that? To this day, it still gives me a certain chill because I remember it very well and it's something I am 100% sure it happened, and more than once. It was weird. My husband left to run errands, so while he was gone I started cleaning the house. I was washing dishes at the sink and I saw him walk down the hall. I asked if he forgot something, but he didn't answer. I watched him walk into our son's room, so I followed him to see what was going on. When I walked into the room, no one was there. That was over 10 years ago and I still can't make sense of it. I have had many nightmares that I had around 8 years old that came true later in life. As a kid, I would forget them after a week. I would have the same nightmare at least 2 weeks after each event came true in my life. Most of those events are traumatic in different ways, so I'm always afraid something else crazy and heavily traumatizing will happen in my life again. I had a very overactive imagination as a child, and it would often lead to either hallucinations or daydreams that blurred the line between real or not. One day I blinked and the white flowered bathroom wallpaper was replaced with a yellow and brown striped wallpaper. The vinyl floor was replaced with a lush brown carpet, and the vanity was replaced with a half-decomposed corpse that was somehow still alive enough to stare at me till I blinked again and it disappeared. I didn't see it, it was more felt. I was at an ex-friend's house, and she started telling me that she has a demon in the house. I immediately got annoyed because I figured this is just another lie coming out of her mouth. And as I was about to tell her that, something grabbed my ankle. I was immediately pulled from the couch to the floor, and then me and the friend just stared at each other. It made no sense at all. I thought the friend was playing a trick on me, but she was a good 6 to 10 feet away from me. And the only other person in the house was in the bathroom. It just ended with all three of us leaving the house for a while. When I was a kid, my family and I moved. I remember we were riding in an SUV packed to the gills. Not a whole lot of room to move around with all the stuff in it. During a pit stop, I remember looking in the back and seeing the ears of my Bugs Bunny plushie moving on their own like some sort of animatronic toy. On top of that, the ears moved as if they were individual creatures. From what I can remember, they were both riding on top of one of my car toys and taking bites out of the vacuum cleaner next to it. The type that still had the hanging bags on them. Yeah. Even as a little kid, I thought it was pretty ridiculous and positive it was just a dream. When we finally got to the new place and unpacked everything, my folks noticed that the bag on the vacuum had a bunch of holes in it. None of us could reach vacuum in transit, not even me. I asked my mom about it many years later and she remembers it too. Never figured out how it actually happened. This happened when I was 8 years old on holiday in West Africa. We were driving on the highway and stopped at a rest spot. Everyone in the car went to the bathroom, grabbed food, and I stayed behind in the back seat. After a few moments, I noticed two men walking towards what I think was a well, and it looked like they were holding something heavy. Right before they threw the thing into the well, they turned so I could see what it was. It was a boy. To this day, I don't know if it was a figment of my imagination, and I never told anyone about it because later that night got into a bad car accident and I convinced myself that the trauma caused me to imagine it. I still feel guilty to this day that child may have died and I just watched.